You know how I got myself to watch this movie? I forced myself to do it. Force of Nature focuses on Emile Hirsch as a police officer who is attempting to evacuate tenants of an apartment building during a hurricane. However, one of the tenants, a doctor played by Kate Bosworth, needs some help convincing her father, played by Mel Gibson, to leave because of his refusal to do so, which slows down evacuation. Things get more complicated though when a thief, played by David Zayas, arrives to execute a heist, leaving everyone trapped and fighting for their lives. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here and you like movies, whether it be blockbusters, hidden gems, or everything in between, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with reviews of new releases and some classics. Today, let's talk about Force of Nature. I glanced over this when I was looking at what movies were coming out a while back, and I didn't think twice of it. The poster doesn't look like anything inspiring. I don't want to pass judgment over a movie based strictly on its poster, but I gotta be honest, it looks like one of those straight-to-DVD movies from the 2000s or early 2010s that you see Nicolas Cage in, or Bruce Willis, or Steven Seagal, or any other Asian action star. Nothing about it really stood out to me. But then I heard how well it did in VOD sales, which was especially mind-boggling to me, given that it had little to no marketing that I recall, and on top of that, the reviews were pretty abhorrent to say the least. But my interest was piqued, and I wanted to see what this was all about. I know there can sometimes be a disconnect between critics and audiences, but yeah, I watched this and it turns out I was missing nothing. This is actually astonishingly awful, and I'd argue it's probably the most tone-deaf movie of the year, given the fact that it's set during a Category 5 hurricane in Puerto Rico, who had just went through Hurricane Maria 2 years before this was filmed and are still dealing with the effects of the hurricane. It just feels really cheap to use this sort of natural disaster in this particular location as the setting for a generic action movie. An action movie where nothing was even well done, might I add. I'd say this is some of the laziest writing I've seen in quite some time. At no point do you feel any sort of emotional stakes, and there are quite a few implausible situations. I mean, in the opening scene, David Zayas is in a bank with one of his associates and an old woman who we have no idea how she's connected to him, but it seems like she's a hostage of some sorts, and she openly shows how scared she is as they're walking out, so he gets annoyed and decides to kill both of them right out in the open before casually strolling out of this crowded bank like he's on a leisure stroll. And he drives away with his partner like it's no big deal without any sort of chase ensuing or any sort of attempt to stop him. And then there's also no logical connection shown to us as to why he and his crew go from this bank to this apartment complex. At least nothing shown to us right away. We don't know what he's looking for or why he's there. He just shows up and starts attacking anyone who gets in his way. It just comes from out of nowhere. Now, I like David Zayas as an actor. I've enjoyed him from when he was on Dexter, and I think he deserves way more work, and he's actually kind of okay here given what he has to work with. But this is a totally one-dimensional villain. They try to play up this angle like he's just this cold-hearted bad dude and we're supposed to fear him, but he has no clear motivations for anything he does and no real personality other than just giving dirty looks and barking orders. So when you have a villain who has nothing about them that stands out, it's hard for me to care about what he does, to be perfectly honest. Going back to implausible situations, there's also a giant, vicious, mysterious animal sitting in one of the tenants' apartments, and it's because of this animal that the protagonists even found their way there to begin with. If for some reason you really want to see this movie, I'm not recommending you do so. I won't spoil it for you because you hear it early on and there's an encounter with it, but you never actually get a glimpse of it, and you don't see what it really is until the end, but they make it just so predictable how they're going to end up using it. The initial encounter has little to no bearing on the rest of the movie, other than to just acknowledge its existence. And while all this action's going on, you have this animal sitting patiently locked away in the other room, which makes no sense that with all this gunfire going off every 2 seconds, it's not losing its mind and trying to break free. And this is in addition to the fact that I'd love to know how this guy got away with keeping this thing in the first place with no issue whatsoever, no arguments with anyone, nothing. I'd really love to find that one out, but you can see how they end up using this thing from like a mile away. On top of that, you have some pretty unlikable leads, to be perfectly honest. I could not bring myself to root for the heroes at all. Emile Hirsch is a straight up terrible person here. He's extremely extremely bitter and seems to have a total contempt for everyone and anything around him. He also mockingly speaks in Spanish in a scene or two when he's around a local, which is just straight up offensive, especially because this is the guy we're supposed to be rooting for. Plus he has a partner played by Stephanie Cayo, who, by the way, I've never seen her act before, but she honestly gave the best performance in the entire movie. And they're supposed to have this sort of good cop, bad cop rapport, I guess. But he barely even treats her with respect. He's totally sarcastic and condescending towards her and never seems to have a positive thing to say. And the fact that she brushes him off without a second thought, despite the fact that he's just a heartless individual, is also kind of insulting, to be honest. Like, it's okay that she just sit there and put up with him acting like a total jerk towards her. But then we'll have random sporadic moments where Hirsch has this change of heart and decides to be sympathetic or almost timid where the script calls for it. He acts like a tough guy who demands his way one minute, and then the next scene he'll ask almost politely for help and tries to act understanding, as if that's suddenly supposed to cancel out him acting like a terrible person one scene ago. It's totally inconsistent behavior, and while it would be nice to have a sympathetic protagonist, like, I'm not asking for him to be more like a jerk, to be clear, but these random moments of being almost a pushover come out of nowhere. Nothing he does for nearly the entire first act indicates that he's actually a nice guy underneath, and that's something they should have established much clearer early on if that's what they were really going for. There's also this really forced romantic subplot between Emile Hirsch and Kate Bosworth. Once the villains invade the apartment complex, Emile Hirsch and Kate Bosworth spend much of the movie cut off from everyone else, and then there's this abrupt shift in tone where the music gets a little sentimental and they start having this heart-to-heart while everyone else in the building is trying to survive, not just from the villains, but this massive hurricane that's supposedly going to tear everyone apart. They just totally forget about everything else going on, and the way they act after like 2 scenes alone, you'd think they were best friends all of a sudden on top of all this. And again, it just totally jumps the shark here, abruptly pivoting Emile Hirsch from someone who is essentially heartless to this sweet, compassionate guy, and it is just pure lazy writing. There is literally no character development getting from point A to point B. Plus, there's no chemistry between either of them, and the performances just feel like they're totally phoned in. Hirsch especially. Like, I know it's partially due to how they're being directed, but it didn't seem like there was much of an effort. And then we get to Mel Gibson. He's actually not in the movie for that long, but he quickly leaves one of the worst sort of impressions. This is almost essentially a caricature of Gibson in real life. His character is openly misogynistic, also being extremely condescending to both Hirsch's partner as well as his own daughter, and he tells stories gloating about how he beat the crap out of people. So even though he helps fend off the people invading the apartment, he is incredibly hard to root for because he is just totally unlikable in every sense of the word. And if his personality doesn't do it for you, the kicker is his character's also sick, and he literally coughs his dialogue out like every other sentence mid-cough. It's almost to the point that I wanted to laugh at him, because him being sick adds nothing to the story. Like, what was the point of it? I guess it was supposed to be a way for us to feel sort of some sympathy for him, but it's like with Emile Hirsch. This doesn't cancel out how he treats everyone else in this movie. I'm not just gonna suddenly feel bad for this guy because he's sick. And outside of some of the supporting characters, it's mainly a case of bad people versus terrible people. And when you add this up along with everything else I mentioned, it just makes for a pretty horrible experience. Yeah, this one's pretty bad. Like, really, really bad. This was clearly a paycheck and nothing more for everyone. The writing's totally lazy, the scenarios are implausible, the acting's terrible outside of like 2 of the supporting performances, on top of most of the characters being either totally unlikable or one-dimensional. Don't even bother with this one. Force of Nature gets a 1 out of 10. Meanwhile, as far as good movies go, I'll have the final part of my Christopher Nolan series out soon. I'll be talking about Dunkirk, so look forward to that within the next few days, along with more 2020 reviews coming soon. So let me know, did you see Force of Nature, or are you planning to see it, and what were your thoughts? Did you like anything about it? Action? Performances? Anything? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it, and for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll catch you next time.